trying to rebuild just like, you ready for this? Watch this. Trying to rebuild just like John Calipari.
Okay.
Hey, he's at Arkansas. You might have heard.
I have.
He now has 7 players, and I now have Arkansas, the Razorbacks, up to number 23 in version 20 of the top 25 and 1 after a commitment from Adu Thiero, who, of course, played for Cal at Kentucky. He is the second Kentucky player to follow Cal to Fayetteville, Big Z being the other one. A possible starting lineup now could be, I don't know, Boogie Flan, Janelle Davis, Carter Knox, Adu Chero, Jonas Adu, and then Big Z, Billy Richmond as reserves. Again, just 7 players, but that looks like a top 25-ish starting lineup to me. Would you agree, or are you showing more patience?
I think it's pretty close. I haven't had a version 1.0, let alone 20.0.
Congratulations.
20. It's May 7th. You've done this 20 times. I remember how happy you were when you didn't have to update the top 25 and 1 anymore. And look at you.
Yeah, you like these coaches out there constantly complaining about the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness. I don't know that it's negatively impacted anybody's life more than mine.
Exactly. You're not getting paid like that.
I'm not. Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm very comfortable with my level of compensation. All right. But I don't have a John Calipari contract or a Scott Drew contract. So, like, I hear you guys. The transfer portal, it's a pain in the ass. I know more than most of you. Every time Norchad or Mir decides to commit somebody, I'm right back in front of a computer anytime he commits to a play. So this is my life. Arkansas, though, it's coming together okay in Fayetteville.
It is, and the Thiero commitment was a semi-surprise here because I think the thought was that he was considering most beyond Arkansas, even though Arkansas was in there, returning to Kentucky, Pitt, and North Carolina. But Arkansas has it's got one of the best coaches and recruiters in the game, and was told that the Arkansas offer definitely came over the top and was an obvious clincher there, in addition to Thiero wanting to and believe that he can stick with the coach that he played with previously. I mean, he averaged 7.2 points and 5 rebounds, and when you can put up those numbers and encroach on, if not actually hit 7 figures as a college player, good on you. And I think his inclusion will be important for Arkansas next season. I do think he is underrated. I think the fact that you have Kentucky fans that were a little let down by the fact that he opted not to stick with Mark Pope and wanted to follow Calipari to Arkansas speaks to that. Also, our colleague Dennis Dodd sat down. He was the first national media member. He sat down with Calipari last week, and I think he has a story coming out here on Tuesday, if not Tuesday or Wednesday. And I want to point everyone to cbssports.com and the app to read it. But the one thing that Dodd told me that Calipari said on the record in the interview is, and I don't think this will be the case, frankly, and you know Cal so well, but it kind of popped to me when Dodd mentioned it, was that Calipari in that interview was like, we'll see who we get, and I like the way we're building our roster. We got a couple more guys, but like, I might not have more than 8 or 9 guys on my roster. Now, that would be a story if we actually get to the middle of June and Arkansas has a total of 9 scholarship players. That would be abnormal because unless you're really dug in, you're probably not aware of this, but 13 scholarships are allowed. But 11 is the new 13 for a lot of coaches. They max out at 11 for a number of reasons. The primary one being, if you have guys who can actually play in spot 12 and spot 13, you're even more concerned with minutes distribution. You're more likely to have some disharmony in your locker room, and it's easier to have player 10 and 11 picking up scrap minutes and just having spots 12 and 13 for preferred walk-ons or outright walk-ons. So 11's like the target for a lot. Some schools obviously go 12. A few will go 13, but 11's like the new 13. The idea that Calipari might wind up with only 9 players, I kind of will believe it when I see it. But what they have right now, it's been a solid haul here. I mean, Janelle Davis will probably be one of the more impactful lead guards in the entire sport next season. I do like his potential under Calipari. I think that's actually a really good fit. Jonas Adu from Tennessee. He's a defensive specialist. We'll see how much all-around game he can have. I feel like they still need, between him and Avicic, they need I feel like they need like one more impact big. We'll see who that is. They're getting fewer and fewer by the moment, by the way. There are a couple of notable ones still out there. We'll get to that before the end of the show. And then how impactful will the freshmen be? Like Carter Knox has real potential. Richmond and Boogie Fland, good players, not as highly rated. Fland expected to play more of an impact role, I think, than Richmond in year one there. EvanMia.com ranks Arkansas's current incoming transfer class, the class on the whole here, as 6th best in the nation. It's pretty good. I think it's clearly top 10. I think it's fair to put the MGP in your top 25 rankings. We'll be interested to see who, player 8, player 9, maybe player 10 is. And I think the biggest question mark out there right now, again, we'll get to the kind of guys that are still on the board later to close the show, but it's DJ Wagner, who is considered potentially a lean to go to USC over Arkansas, but obviously Arkansas is still in there. And if they were to get Wagner there, I actually really like his potential to pop. I do like it a lot as a sophomore point guard. But overall, yeah, they've officially entered the chat, so to speak. And Calipari, no shock whatsoever, has done well for himself. But it feels like they still are missing one more. Like, that's a good guy, and they don't quite have that, but they're definitely in the mix.
Right now, Arkansas has 7 players. I was the beat writer for 2 of their fathers. If you were to get DJ Wagner also at Arkansas, I could be the beat writer for 3 of Arkansas's 8 players, their fathers. Of course, Wani, and then Almami Chero. That's the wild thing. 20 years ago, it was Almami Chero. Now it's Adu Thiero. Something changed. Something changed over the years. And then, of course, Billy Richmond. I covered his father first in high school, and then he went to the Vanderbilt and then to the University of Memphis. So I like the roster. To your point about trying to fill it all the way out to 13, I can't tell you how many coaches over the past, say, year or two since the world changed have told me they have no interest in ever going to 13 real scholarship players again.
Yeah.
Like will not do it. The consensus I've heard is give me 10 real players, and I'll take my other 3 scholarships and I'll give them to walk-ons because they're thrilled and they'll do anything you want. They're just you take 3 real players and you make them player 11, 12, 13. This is the point you're making. They're disgruntled. You take 3 walk-ons, make them players 11, 12, 13. They're just thrilled. They're on scholarship. They'll do anything for you. They'll work hard in practice. They'll be great teammates. And now, if you're playing 8 dudes, yeah, your 10th guy might be upset. Maybe your 9th guy a little unhappy. But you'd rather have 1 or 2 guys who aren't satisfied than 5 or 6. So I think roster building is different than it's ever been. And in a sport where coaches used to scream they wanted more, now basically everybody seems to want less.
Yeah. You get into that 10 spot, you get a little, you have 2 significant injuries, and you got a real depth problem there overall. Right. So it is interesting to see how coaches choose to approach with that. But yeah, 11 has become more and more the sweet spot here. And again, we'll just kind of wait and see if Arkansas actually, if it doesn't hit double figures, that would be fascinating. I don't think it'll happen, but Cal told it to Dodd, and I'm interested to read and see his story there. And Arkansas doing what we basically expected here to this point. Calipari being able to land some legitimate names. They've still got Avicic on the roster. We'll see. He had his one moment where we were ready to put him in the Hall of Fame, but we'll see if he can really pop. He'll come off the bench to start right away, obviously there. And who else might be involved? Arkansas, as we mentioned on a recent episode as well. Also, working with one of the biggest war chests in all of college basketball from an NIL perspective. So I think they're likely to still be able to get another player or 2, although at some point the money does start to run lower. But like Janelle Davis, Jonas Adu Thiero, these are all players that as transfers are accepted in the industry to be receiving $1 million+ in NIL through the collective there. And so with that, you're going to attract a lot of attention, and you're going to get more players interested in you because for obvious reasons there. I do like the mix though. I like the blend here, and no, Arkansas doesn't set up as the best team in the SEC. We can get to that a little later if you want and touch on it quickly, but Alabama actually very much so right now is that. But so far so good down there in Fayetteville with what Calipari's been able to do.
What is interesting, and maybe this will help us transition to where I wanted to go next. You mentioned war chest, and it's like we used to have to whisper about this stuff, right? Like, I heard. Now it's just like, Arkansas had a lot of money to spend, and that is probably how they got this done. Meantime, in the past couple of days, both Alabama and Baylor added big time heralded transfers. And I think you would agree. We don't have to put a number on it, although I've had some coaches put numbers on it. But like it's a reasonable assumption that Baylor and Alabama are also operating, you tell me, with massive war chest.
Yeah. I mean, part of this is that, when Scott Drew decided not to go to Louisville and Kentucky, one of the major factors was, Baylor needed to increase its NIL capabilities in order to remain competitive in the best conference in the country. And he got assurances and promises from the most powerful people at that university, around the university, and who support that university. And so because of that, it positioned Baylor to do well and to be successful in this, in this portal cycle. And that obviously materialized in recent days. We're going to get to that.